First and foremost, thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful, and I'm really so pleased to see so many familiar faces. But there will be some people here who don't really know me, so I thought I'd start with a very quick introduction that may give some relevance to the exhibition. So I was born into a family that valued art. My father was a singer and my mother was a potter, one of New Zealand's finest, and very, very generous with her knowledge. So it wasn't sort of surprising to me that I retained a lifelong interest in art, even though I didn't pursue it as a career. When I got to high school, I found that I was equally in love with science and history, but a succession of English teachers had told me how poor my writing was, and I thought historians are writers, and therefore I'll do science, and I did. It didn't take me long as a practicing scientist to actually realise that science and history weren't that far apart. Basically, a person took the data that they'd collected or observed and told a story about it. So you had to be able to write convincingly in both cases. So nearly 50 years of writing science stories, I think, was quite a useful apprenticeship for poetry writing later in life. So I think probably I wrote my first poem. Let me talk about the printing first. In the 70s, for reasons I cannot remember, I started occasionally making my own printed Christmas cards. And in 1983, I did it continuously. So I've printed a Christmas card every year since 1983. Initially, I had the brilliant move of using my children's artwork as prints. So the problem was that you had to do 3 prints every Christmas and not just one. When they reached their mid-teens, they said, "Dad, we've had enough of this," and I had to design my own prints for the next 15 years. But now I've got grandchildren, so I can use theirs if I want. So, first 20 years it was screen printing. I had a little screen, enjoyed the main paper replicas and used it. My life changed in 2002. First thing that happened in 2002 was I went to a 1-week-long Central District's Print Council workshop in Whanganui by Marilyn Webb. She's a marvellous person, a marvellous teacher. And it was a course on woodblock printing. I've virtually never done anything except woodblock prints since then. Not that my work looks anything like hers. It's just beautiful. She's produced some beautiful stuff. The second thing in 2002 that affected me and my poetry was I started to experience a shortness of breath on exercise. And 17 years later, I got a diagnosis. So, a diagnosis can be quite liberating, even when it's a death sentence. The third thing that happened in 2002 was my daughter Mai came to me and said she wanted to learn te reo, and would I come along to the night classes with her? So I did. By the end of the year, I was, like many Pākehā experience, totally hooked and fallen in love with the language. It's poetry and cadences, and it's calm spirituality, and the privilege of looking over the fence into Te Ao Māori. So poetry came just a little later. I think the first poem I really wrote was in 2008, because the iconography of the print that I'd made would have been unfamiliar to everyone. It was based on a karakia for untangling nets. So I thought it needed some explanation, so I wrote a poem. Probably not the first, it wasn't the first poem I wrote, actually. In 1964, I was awarded the Molly Campbell Shield for Senior Poetry, and my 2 poems were published in the Hutt Valley High School yearbook of that year. I still don't know if there were any other contestants in the competition. So that's my background. If we come to the prints, maybe I'll talk about the prints a little bit myself first. Just trying to think what I want to say. They were all based on photographs I took at the site. So I'd wander around and take a number of photographs. So I feel a bit embarrassed about that as a technique. It's the first time in dozens of prints that I've ever done anything and designed my own print. But I felt I needed to have, at the end of the process, a place that was recognisable to people, that they could actually go to and say, yes, here it is. So I did fiddle a lot. Basically, anything extra that was superfluous, extraneous, got the heave-ho. So you can look in vain for the Michael Joseph Savage statue at Bastion Point, but I gave it the flick. I didn't think it was relevant, or the car parking lot in front of it. And that sort of thing occurred regularly. I removed my son Oliver, who was straddling the cannon at Ruapeka, and various other things. There was a go-to one in which I didn't want to go, on and on and on. They're all that sort of thing. And the other main thing in terms of design was really I like to have strong diagonals and strong patches of colour as well as lack of colour to balance each other, and so the white background portions are as important as the printed image itself. colours. Even before I started any printing, I realised 20 prints in greens and browns, which is the predominant landscape of our country, would be so boring as would send people to sleep. So I decided to incorporate colours. Most of them were, the colours were chosen because I felt they suited the print. There were some of them that I consciously chose the colour, like the St Michael's Church is a red print which matches the colour of the roof of the church, and the Tikahika print is in grey, which matches the boulders in the foreground. And you can sort of play games with other ones about why I chose the colours, but we won't go any further along that line. The other aspect of the prints was that they started out rather with a desire to have a neutrality as being a place that might be places where people could reconcile the events. But as I went on and accumulated prints, there was certain iconography which was, to my mind, quite telling. I'm referring to the extensive appearance of fences and gates and the connotations that those structures have on our society, really. And the third one that appeared was power poles everywhere. It's if I think New Zealand, there's a lot of New Zealand landscape painting, but little, if any, of them ever show fences and gates and power. I have at home a lovely painting by Avis Hicks, which is nothing but power poles. And so I really only just recently realised now maybe what she was thinking about when she painted that painting. The other observation is when I started, I was determined to leave out any pictures of the memorial tablets. You go to Google and everybody's taking a photograph of that and not much else. I sort of had it in the back of my mind that these structures would be imposing and triumphalist, but nothing was further from the case. The memorials that the Pākehā put up 100 years ago now, probably, are quite modest and appropriate, and there's no suggestion that these are in any way driving history. They're just a plaque, which left me quite disappointed when I visited Rangariri, and I believe similar structures are now been placed at Aratoi, large, brightly coloured po and other objects, which to a Pākehā immediately lead to look like a celebration of victory. There was no victory there. There is no victory in any of these wars. So I say this without knowing the precise kaupapa of those who installed these objects, but I've always, and I did write, and I've written in my introduction, that any further monuments to the war should at least look at both sides, and I think this is an opportunity for Waikato and Maori to consult with Pākehā over what the other reading, well, part of the same is that Maori are still very sorrowful and very angry about the land acquisition that occurred, and that this is not going to go away quickly. So I think Pākehā are going to have to be very patient in terms of driving a reconciliation over this. In fact, I don't think it's appropriate at all. Differ with some of the cases. Anne Salmon just wrote a nice article in Newsroom this week that people might feel interested in reading. Turning to the poems, as Paul said, they were written in English and then translated into Te Reo. Very much the same, occasional changes, but not much really different. So I wanted to tell one. I didn't want to at all tell the Maori story. I'm not Maori, and so it's totally inappropriate. What the poems are is a kind of a grab bag of history and my own personal reflections. And I'm not sure why some poems tend in one direction and some in another, but they just do. So maybe you can turn the page of the book and what you read is not what you can expect from reading the previous page, if you know what So, yeah, I would really like to thank Clayton Cook for revising my Te Reo, which has really suffered from 2 years of COVID-induced isolation. So, in conclusion, this book is meant to be an introduction to the New Zealand wars. It'll make us think a little bit more about them. I know the history is being documented quite well by people like Michael King and James Gullich. And Jan Binney and Anne Salmon herself. And there was a new generation of young Maori historians whose work will be of interest. the other good source of material is the submissions to the Waitangi Tribunal by the various iwi, where you get great detail of what occurred. So I hope this encourages people to visit some of these places and think more about how we all interact. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.